Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. This is the economics and marketing session. We do this every year. I'm Don Shurley. This is Amanda Smith. Amanda will speak in just a few minutes. We appreciate y'all being here. I know it's early. It's 8 o'clock in the morning, but the only time I like getting up earlier and getting out earlier than this is if I'm in the deer stand. And those opportunities have passed us this year. So we want to spend a little bit of time this morning. Like I said, we do. How many of you, this is the first time in this session or that you've attended our cotton conference? Really? First time? Wow. Okay. Well, that's fantastic. I don't know how many we'll end up with this year, but I guess about 5 or 6 years or so now back, Georgia Cotton Commission teamed up with the University of Georgia and kind of started having a joint program, and that's made for a better, stronger program. The attendance has been up, and we appreciate everything that the Cotton Commission does, and particularly what they've done for us with the University of Georgia that work in cotton. I want to spend a few minutes before we turn it over to Amanda just rehashing last year just a little bit, and then trying to look ahead and see if we can make any sense out of where we're headed. I tell most folks I'm not going to stand up here and pretend that I know where prices are going. Nobody does. But I can give you some tidbits that you need to keep in mind, that you need to think about. I can tell you some things that will tend to move prices in this direction or that direction. And as we move through the year, as you move through planning and we move through the season, keep those things in mind and look for those opportunities. Look at how the market's tracking when those things happen, and evaluate those opportunities whenever you can. You know, sometimes whenever prices are low, believe it or not, whenever prices are low, that's when making marketing decisions are even more difficult. You would think it wouldn't be. Hey, we get a rally in price, ta-da, we go out and contract or we do something. But oftentimes it's not that easy. So let me take a few minutes and go through and discuss some things with you just very, very briefly, and talk to you about kind of what we see coming ahead. I'm not going to go through all this. I'm just going to touch on a couple of things, but these are some factors as I look ahead to 2016. These are some of the things that I see that, and there could be more. You could just as easily look at this and say, well, Don, what about this or that? But these are some things that I see that are in play as we look ahead to what might happen in terms of prices for this year. Some of these things concern me, particularly the demand side. The demand or use of cotton worldwide in mills is going nowhere. I know we talk a lot about stocks in China and stocks worldwide. We talk about all these other factors. But to me, if you're a cotton grower, and a lot of you are, and I know you're in this business for the long term, you know, as I look 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the road, all these other things that are out there will kind of play themselves out over time. The demand side worries me. We need better growth in demand, in the use of cotton in mills around the world. And this is one of the things that concerns me, and I'll show you a slide or two on that. You can look down the list here. One of the other things that I'll talk about, believe it or not, we expect acreage to increase for cotton this year. You may wonder, well, why the heck is that? Cotton's trying to barely keep its head above 60 cents. Well, if you understand how the LDP works and you understand those factors that that go into the total amount of money that the farmer receives. When you consider how those things work, and when you look at where other commodity prices are, then it's not out of line to think that we could see a bump up in acreage, and I think we will, and we'll talk about that later. We've had some problems, as I'll talk about during lunch when we hand out our quality awards. We really had some issues with quality this year. Harvest started off great, the quality looks good, but man, we got into November, got all those rains. It got hard to get the crop out of the field. The crop got rained on, never could get it to brighten back up. About the time, you know, if cotton gets rained on and you give it a few days of sunshine, it'll brighten back up and you pick it and the grades are okay. But about the time the cotton would start to dry out a little bit out in the field, we'd have another front and another rain come through and get it wet again. So the color grades were really off. We had problems with bark. We had a problem with seed coat fragments, which is typically something we just hardly ever deal with, but it was really, really, really a problem this year. And again, so we've enjoyed, for the good cotton that we had, the basis and the quality premiums have been very strong. That has added some additional money in the farmer's pocket if you were able to take advantage of that. And hopefully those things are going to continue into 2016 to give you an extra 2 or 3 cents or more there than what the futures market is actually showing. This is a look at the new crop 2016 December futures. We've really taken a hit the last 2 days. Every time the market goes up or down like this, I kind of jump on the internet and try to look for stuff that might be happening out there that would cause it to do so. The only thing that I could really find that made any sense to me, a lot of stuff I read that really don't make any sense. I mean, if it's not fundamental supply demand stuff, I don't pay attention to it. If I read something and it says something like, what technical this or speculative this or whatever, I just, you know, if it's not fundamental supply demand, it's over the top of my head. So I look for things that I know are fundamental economic related that might be behind what's going on. Like I said, we've been down a couple of days. The only thing I can find out there was a little bit of mention about, well, people are starting to think acreage is going to be up next year. Well, duh. I mean, we all know that. There's a good chance of that. Also, a little bit about maybe China's going to get ready to start releasing some more of their stocks. So, you know, the point is that, you know, prices get down in this 61, 62 cent area. The market, and you can look at this, it doesn't take a scientist to figure all this out. I mean, typically the market gets down around this 61, 62 cent area, and the market kind of wakes up and decides, okay, that's low enough, and their interest comes back, and people push the price back up through buying, whether that's actual buying of physical cotton or whether it's buying going long on the board. But we are threatening to kind of test that 61, 62 cent level, which so far is kind of held so far through the year. A couple of things that I'll point out here. If you look at it worldwide, this past year, 2015 crop, we made about 9 million bales less cotton due to reduced crops in the U.S., China, India, Pakistan. We had reduced crops in several major countries, and so production is actually below demand or use for the first time in 5 or 6 years. That's going to allow us, y'all know that stocks have been a problem. World stocks are at record levels. I told the Ag Forecast group here yesterday, we had a big crowd here yesterday for the Ag Forecast. I told that group yesterday, I said, if we didn't plant one single acre of cotton this year, anywhere in the world, there's enough cotton already in inventory left over from last year and previous years to run every textile mill in the world for a year. If we didn't plant one single acre this year, we got enough cotton on hand in inventory around the world right now to run all these mills for a year. That's a lot of cotton, and you wonder why cotton prices are where they are. Now, there's a lot of unknowns about that and stuff, and we'll talk about that, but generally what's going to happen is when you have production less than use, that allows you to draw down on those stocks and get those whittled down just a little bit. And this kind of shows you the picture. You see China is the green there, and the rest of the world's in the yellow and gold. Stocks have come down some. You see for 3 or 4 years there, as we've talked about before, China was building a lot of stocks. But they're not doing it that anymore, obviously, and the stocks have come down some. One of the big unknowns, and it continues to be, and I don't know that anybody's got the answer, that is a lot of cotton I just mentioned. I mean, if you take the green bar and the yellow bar and add them together, that's over 100 million bales of cotton total. What I tell people is that there's a lot of questions still about the quality of that cotton in China. China holds 60% of all the stocks in the world, but there continue to be questions about the quality of it, whether their mills can use it or not, whether they will use it or not. And if there are quality concerns, which frankly we don't know, if there are quality concerns and quality issues with that cotton, then yes, all those stocks are there and those stocks might be problematic. But if the quality of it is such that the mills can't use it or will not use it, then the effective supply, what can actually be put in the pipeline and used, is much less than we think. So all the uncertainty about quality, all the uncertainty about China's policies that determine how much of that cotton will go into their mills, how much cotton they will decide to import. All those things have been factors in the past, and they'll still come into play as we kind of look ahead to next year. The scale on this chart's a little bit, makes this a little bit difficult to really look at, but let me explain to you what you're looking at here. Some of you that have been in meetings I've done the last week or two have already seen this and heard me explain it. But USDA does projections every month. Okay, they come out with supply, demand, and crop production estimates every month. The first estimates that USDA did for the 2015 crop year started way back last May. And then they make estimates, they revise those estimates, come out with new estimates every month. So if we go back all the way back to last May, and I want you to compare where we were then to where we are now in January, the most latest report. If you go back in May, USDA projected that the demand or the use of cotton in the 2015 crop year would be a little over 115 million bales. Okay, that was their first estimate way back last May. Their most recent estimate this month, earlier this month, is that the world demand or use of cotton for the 2015 crop year is barely over 110 million. In other words, we've lost 5 million bales of potential demand. Their estimates have been adjusted downward, so the demand side, although that 110 is a little bit more than what we used last year, this still shows a weakening. You know, what they used to used to think was going to be 115 million bale demand is now barely 110. So their forecast of what? Got a little bit weaker, a little bit weaker, a little bit weaker. That weighs on the market. And it's one reason why we have not been able to get some traction. Production around the world has gotten smaller, again, as I showed you a while ago, but the demand side has gotten so weak that it's been difficult for prices to get any traction and find any momentum. It seemed like every month when USDA's numbers come out, they would cut again. So it was hard for the market to really find something positive to grab hold of. As we look ahead to next year, I think we will see an increase in acreage. Nobody really knows how much, and to be honest with you, there are only two reasons that I think that. Number one, let's not forget that had it not been too wet and had it not been for weather, Texas would have planted at least 500,000 acres more this past year than they actually did. A lot of that crop they couldn't get in the ground, and some of it eventually was shifted into grain, sorghum, or other crops. And prices are about the same this year as they were last year. So what I'm saying is, had the weather cooperated, and prices are the same right now as they were a year ago this time, cotton in the 60s, had the weather cooperated, we know Texas would have planted at least another 500,000 acres had the weather cooperated. Also, we had a big increase in peanut acreage here in Georgia. We may see that big increase again. Who knows? My idea is that I don't think 800,000 acres of peanuts can be sustained in Georgia on a regular basis over a period of time. A year or so here or there, yeah. But if we're going to maintain beneficial crop rotations, I don't think 800,000 acres of peanuts every year is healthy for that. I'm not an agronomist. I could be completely wrong, and I probably am. But I think acreage will increase in the U.S. this year for two reasons. Again, Texas would have planted more last year. Prices for other crops like corn and soybeans are also down compared to last year. So, the signals are that we may and likely will see some increase in acreage. But like I say on the slide here, what we plant is not near as important as what we end up harvesting, and what we get is yield. So whenever the planting numbers start coming out here over the next month or so, the National Cotton Council will have their estimate out here in a few weeks during their annual meeting. USDA will have their number come out the end of March. As all these numbers start floating out, a lot of attention will be assigned to it. And if that number in the next month or so for plantings comes out large, you can expect, you remember what I showed you on prices just a while ago, back to 61 cents. You can expect to see some pressure to pull prices down a little bit. Don't be discouraged by that, because what's eventually going to affect prices is what? How much we're actually able to plant, and then ultimately how much we're actually able to harvest. So, if Texas increases plantings this year and then ends up walking away from 1 million acres of it, that's a big deal. So when the numbers come out over the next month, that may act to weaken prices just a bit, but just keep in mind, ultimately this market's going to track on what we harvest and what we potentially make in the way of yield, and we won't know that until later in the summer. So don't be discouraged, particularly by the prices. We'll skip over some of this. Let me end up very quickly and make some comments about LDPs. Let me try the best way to explain this. This is what the LDP has done, or what y'all still like to call the pot payment. If we go back to early October and kind of track it all the way through right now the marketing loan gain is 4.99 cents through the close of business on Thursday. This kind of shows you what it's been every week. A couple of points that I want to make here, and we were talking before we started the meeting here. As we kind of look ahead to 2016, I think it's important that you understand, in terms of helping you marketing, how all this works and kind of why things are doing what they're doing. Whenever the LDP is coming down like this, you can see we went from almost 8 cents back first week in October down to less than 4 cents a few weeks later. Then it popped back up, and then it went back down to around 3, and now it's up to around 5. What determines this LDP or this marketing loan gain is what we call the world price of cotton. It's called the Far East price. This is the price of cotton at the port shipped overseas, not U.S. cotton necessarily. There's about, I think, 19 different what we call gross of cotton that every week they take the 5 best or lowest or cheapest prices for that cotton, cheapest 5 of those 19, delivered to Far East markets, and they average those together, and that's what they call the A index. And then from that A index, they make an adjustment for transportation cost and for grades, and they come up with something called the adjusted world price, or AWP. That's what determines whether we have a pot payment or not. If that AWP is below the loan rate, that's your pot payment or your LDP. So whenever the LDP is coming down, that means prices are going up. When the LDP is going up, that means prices are going down. Okay? So just remember that. When the LDP went from 8 to say 4, you might think that you lost money. But in fact, the reason it went down is because the value of the cotton went up. They kind of play off each other. They kind of trade off. So this is a graph that kind of shows you that. And I know this is a little busy looking here. But basically what you've got U.S. cotton futures down here, and I'm running from 55 to 75. That pretty much covers it, I think. And this Far East price, or A index, right now is running about 5 cents above New York cotton futures. So I just basically took these numbers down here for U.S. cotton prices, added a nickel to it, and shot that purple line across there. That's your Far East or A index. Then you take off about 20 cents. It's actually 19.75 cents. You take off about 20 cents, and that gives you this red line, or your AWP. Your LDP is 52 cents, which is our base quality loan rate. It's 52 cents minus this red line, and that gives you this line here, which is your LDP. And what you see is that as the price of cotton goes up down here, and the world price, or the Far East price, as the price of cotton goes up, the LDP is going to go down, and eventually out here somewhere around 67 cents, your LDP disappears, and this blue line represents your total money, what you sold your cotton for plus your LDP. Your total money will begin to increase. What you see is that this blue line is flat across here until you get out to about 67 cents. What that means is the LDP is going down, but what's happening to your prices? Your prices are going up, so they're offset. So this blue line is going to be flat until you get out here, until cotton prices get up to about 67 cents. The total money in your pocket really doesn't change. So, just realize that, and kind of realize the relationship there. this is kind of my outlook summary, and then I got 2 more slides I want to go through, I think, very quickly. Prices, at least for right now, are probably going to track similar to what they did last year. And y'all know what they did last year. We're pretty much stuck in a rut between something around 62 and 66 or 67. Right now, I don't see anything out there in terms of good old fundamental supply and demand that kind of tends to make me believe that prices are going to track any differently than where they did this past year. What we talked about last year right here in this room, and we talked about around the state when we did meetings last year, to me, and you know, I don't see a whole lot of incentive to do anything until December futures get up around that 68 to 70 cent mark. And the reason that I say that is because even this year, if you were to have taken the LDP this year, put that money in your pocket, and then sold your cotton, that goes back to this blue line here. That's what I call your total money. Take your LDP, sell your cotton. What's the total money in your pocket as a result of that? That total money, by the time you take the LDP and sell your cotton, is going to be around 70 cents, and actually for a lot of the time was up around 73 cents if you had quality cotton and got paid premiums for it. So, you know, as long as cotton's low where it is now, I just don't see much incentive other than just sitting back and wait for prices to get up around that 68 or 70 cent mark. Then you make a decision of what you want to do. Otherwise, just be satisfied for the fact that you've got the LDP as kind of your shock absorber, your cushion against those low prices. And we move into harvest time next fall. You take your LDP or put your cotton in loan, whatever you want to do, and sell your cotton. One of the things that I will end up on, say a little bit about quality. I know some of y'all in here are merchants or sell cotton or kind of contract with growers, find cotton for mills. The quality of cotton has really, really improved the last several years. If you attend the luncheon today, and I'll talk about our quality awards, we very routinely now in Georgia with these newer varieties, we very routinely in Georgia now, year in and year out, have a lot of cotton that staples 36 and 37, if not better. The base grade is 34. A lot of contracts, not all of them. I've seen some contracts that are starting to change. Hey, Don. A lot of contracts, you know, if prices got to 70 cents and you wanted to lock in that price on some bales of cotton, that contract may not specify any premiums for quality, okay? Typically they don't, but increasingly they do. I would encourage you to study the contracts, look at them, make sure your basis is strong, talk with your buyer, talk with the person that the gin is dealing with, try to get the terms of that contract so that you can get paid at least something for your quality. Find a contract that'll pay you for those 36s. Find a contract that'll pay you for color. You may not find it all the time, but I think they are out there and you will find them. Try to get paid for your quality. Our quality is improving. It's getting better. And hopefully you'll be able to find a contract that will reward you for that. You know, if the market got to 70 cents, you might want to jump on that all day. But if that contract says, hey, I ain't going to pay you for 36s and 37s, then you kind of scratch your head and say, I'm not sure about that. So, you know, try to get paid for your quality. Try to do that as best you can. And I know that some buyers and merchants, some contracts out there are doing that. And try to get paid for your quality is all I'm saying. Very quickly, I want to talk a little bit about, I'm not going to go through all this, y'all can read this. We've got a couple of changes on stacks coming in that'll be effective for the 2016 crop year. I've been asked several times when we'll know whether we get a stacks payment for this year or not, and for this past year, and when that will be. All I can tell you is that for 2015 stacks, the projected price was 63 cents. Now, if you know how stacks works, or if you had a revenue policy for your own cotton on your own farm, it works the same way. The projected price on stacks was 63 cents. The harvest price was also 63 cents. So that means in terms of trying to figure out whether stacks is going to pay or not, there's no price thing that's going to come into play there. The projected price was 63. The harvest price ended up to be 63. So on the price side of the equation, there's nothing to indicate stacks is going to pay anything. Okay? Whether stacks pays anything or not will be solely dependent on the yield side. If the stacks payment is going to be received, if your county or area yield on your stacks policy is less than 90% of the average. So just think about it. If the county or area yield for cotton in your area was less than 90% of what you think the average probably is, then you're likely to get a stacks payment. Otherwise, you won't. So there's two stacks is a revenue policy. So there's two things that trigger it. You got a price side, and you got a yield side. Well, the price side is kind of zero. But if the yields were low enough, below 90% of average, then you'll get a payment. When will you get that payment? I don't know. I know that typically these county yields, if it were NASP data, if it were USDA data, which it's based partly on, I know that those numbers are usually not known until about May. But I know that the stacks yields, the county area yields used for the stacks policy are not just USDA data. They're also crop insurance own data. It's part of their own data set. So I don't know when they will have the yields determined for the county or the area with regard to stacks, but I know that typically it's probably going to be in that, I'm just guessing, in that April, May, maybe even June area, sometime around there. And again, the yields are probably going to be determined as a combination of USDA data and RMA, or crop insurance's own data from producers just like y'all. The last thing I'll leave you with, under the new farm bill, the loan rate on cotton is the average of that adjusted world price I talked about for the previous 2 crop years. Now I know this looks a lot real busy here, and I apologize for that. But basically I'm trying to go ahead and stick something in your mind to think about a year or 2 down the road. The loan rate of the new farm bill is the average of the adjusted world price for the preceding 2 crop years. But that loan rate has to be announced by October 1st. Well, we're not through with the 2015 crop year, which we're in now, until the end of July. So the loan rate for the 2016 crop, which has already been announced at 52 cents, is the average of the adjusted world price for 2013 and 14. There's a year lag in there. So The loan rate for the 2016 crop is going to be 52 cents because the average AWP for 13 and 14 was almost 61. Given where the adjusted world price has been for 14 and now for 15 so far, if we're thinking down the road another year, we could see the loan rate for the 2017 crop is going to be the average of what the AWP was for 14 and 15. And if you look at where those are right now, where are we? The average is below 51 cents. So thinking another year down the road now, when we come in here next year and do this, we could be looking at a drop in the loan rate for cotton. Not for this coming crop year, but for the 2017 crop year. Hopefully, cotton will be 80 cents again by that time, 70 cents, who knows. Hopefully cotton will be better than it is now, and we won't have to worry about any of this. The fact that loan rate is what it is won't really matter. Okay, it's only important when we have low prices and it runs into that LDP calculation.